Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes as people trickle in. We know that we are a little bit late, and we also have a third person here.
Something's different. This is going to be I talk with my hands. This is going to be hard.
I know, and holding a mic.
And my phone. So, hi.
So first things first, if you're here with us live, please let us know that you can hear us, you can see us. Just drop it in the comments in the live chat. We are very excited to be coming to you live from Chicago today. And this right here is one of my best friends. She is also a fellow coach. I'm going to actually let her introduce herself, but we are staying with her. It is her birthday today. She is also a giant Bachelor fan. We talk about the show offline all the time. And so because we were here, we wanted to share her perspective with you. So without any further ado, Amanda Katherine Loy.
Hi, guys. Nice to meet you all. I've been watching the show, obviously, alongside of y'all, so I'm excited. And yeah, my name is Amanda Katherine Loy. I'll just do a quick intro, but I am also, like Rachel said, a coach. I'm a mindset and wellness coach, so we actually support each other in very different ways, and we run group programs together, and also I do one-on-one coaching. Hi, guys. And yeah, my focus is really on like body positivity and really embracing who you are and living your fuck yes life. That's my whole shit. And I'm really... Oh, thank you. So I'm excited to be spending my birthday with all of you guys and talking about The Bachelor because it's my shit. I've been watching since season 1, so... Yeah. I am deep in this.
Amanda and I both go back, and we're going to be sharing a mic, so we'll be sitting like this a lot.
Yeah, we've got a bit of a MacGyvered setup in this case. So instead of our laptop being sort of in front of us, it's down there. So we're going to be looking away, and we don't have mic stands, and I'm already trying to talk with my hands, and my hands are full. So, yeah, we're just going to kind of shoot from the hip on this one.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So very exciting.
Yeah.
If everybody could just...
Hi from Portugal.
Hi from Portugal. Oh, my gosh.
Chicago.
Hi from Chicago.
I was just in Portugal.
Oh, yeah, you
No
were.
shit, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Okay.
All right, so this episode,
Big oof.
Yeah, big...
So,
big oof
really,
is an excellent
real quick,
description.
update on this. So we did something we usually haven't done before. We went to a watch party last night at a bar, and they had like rose petals on the ground and everything. Getting to hear audience reaction to what was happening in the show was fucking amazing. People were booing when certain people got roses. There was someone yelling horror at the TV screen a whole bunch.
We didn't love that.
Didn't love that.
I mean, it was funny for a second, and then we realized the societal implications, and immediately it was not exciting anymore.
That being said, it was like watching sports fans watch their like their favorite team play, but it was The Bachelor, and it was an experience that I'm very happy. I don't know if I'll go back to a watch party because it was very difficult to take notes during the time, but it was something.
Yeah, so we ended up rewatching the episode this morning with Amanda. She's currently in a show here in Chicago. If you're in Chicago, please go see If Then at the Brown Box Theater, right? Correct?
At Brown Paper Box.
Fuck, I was so close.
You're so close.
I was so close.
Box?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like I'm in a brown paper box?
You are in a brown paper box.
What is a brown paper box?
Like cardboard?
I don't know.
Really, we're analyzing the name.
We're like unpacking this company now. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into this episode. This is The Bachelor Pilot Pete, episode 5.
Yeah.
Oh, one quick housekeeping thing. ABC has dicked us all around this week. And if you noticed at the very end of the episode, they said this Wednesday on The Bachelor, not next week on The Bachelor.
Yeah.
We will be flying home on Thursday, the day after this random episode is going to be airing. So what we will do is next Tuesday, we will recap Wednesday and Monday's episode. We figure if we can recap 4 episodes in our first episode of the season, we can do 2. So that is what we're going to do. And also this week's episode was 3 fucking hours.
Yeah. What's happening?
ABC's
going crazy.
If you guys know what's going on, can you let us know in the comments, like if you've heard why? Because I have not heard why we're getting 5 hours of Bachelor content this week.
Nothing that I've seen from this episode shows me why. Like, there was the whole head injury thing we'll talk about that was not even a part of it, but I thought that'd be the reason for 2 episodes. I can't understand why we're getting so much content when a lot of it is pretty inconsequential to the actual storyline of the show.
Correct.
Right? It's a lot of bullshit.
Also, if you see us leaning down, normally we have the computer at eye level to see your comments and be able to interact with you. Just because of our setup, it's kind of out of eye range. So we want to make sure that we can still interact with you and see it. So if we go blurry for a second, that's why. Thanks in advance for hanging in with us.
All right, that's most of our housekeeping. I think that we're ready to go.
Well, Alea made her bed, and so she has to Alea in it.
Oh my God.
I almost
when Natasha said that, I peed my pants.
got up and walked out of the bar when I heard that. I'm like, well, this is going to be, if this is how this episode's starting, then I'm fucking over it already.
It set the tone for the entire episode.
Or Sydney's line where she said, I don't know if Peter is ready for a Sydney. He needs an Alea.
Oh, no.
One of the many reasons I titled this one Big Oof.
Yeah, Big Oof. That's actually I think that's a good episode name for this episode of The
5,
Right Reasons.
Big Oof.
Big Oof.
There's a lot of problematic stuff that comes out in this episode. Use of the word crazy, which is pretty offensive, actually, the way they're using it. There's a lot of stuff is thrown around in this episode.
Really, at the beginning of the episode, the biggest issue for me, and this was my biggest issue with episode 4, was that at least what we're being seen, or at least what we're being shown, at least what we're seeing, is Peter is expressing a lot of empathy and compassion for the women in their experience on the show. He is incredibly apologetic. He is acknowledging how hard it must be. He's not getting any empathy in return. And I understand why some of them are frustrated. Some of them have very valid reasons to be annoyed or hurt or challenged with this process, but they are not acknowledging that it's hard for him too. And he's acknowledging that it's hard for them, but it's not being reciprocated. And that to me is something that wears on a person. And so when there's been so much criticism of Peter not having, a quote unquote backbone or being as strong or assertive as maybe some other bachelors have been, to me, I see that as a reaction to not receiving any empathy at all from the people around him. And the whole first chunk of this episode to me was like production and editing trying to reset the tone of the whole
100%.
season to be like, can we just start with a clean slate? Peter's going to apologize a lot. The girls are going to be like, oh, we accept your apology.
I have a thought. Do you think that's an expectation thing, though? Like,
yes.
I think that we as viewers expect the lead to be this very assertive, confident, like, I'm going to be taking
like
ownership for everything. Exactly. Yeah. And I think, like, when you go on to The Bachelor, I've never done it, obviously, but if I did, I think you're so used to seeing the women not take really a lot of agency for that and show up in that way. And so I think that's also like almost like a society, like a weird Bachelor societal expectation of how to show up in that bubble.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's challenging for me because the women in this case, especially around how the Alea situation was played out, they created the problem all on their own. They picked out Alea and started attacking her for what their perception of the situation was. Then they were mad at Peter for the situation they created.
Right.
And in previous seasons, as we've seen with Peter and get involved in with the Luke P situation, the men went to Hannah in a supportive fashion. Hey, this person's not here and we care about you. Right, most of them.
Yeah.
Well, most of them, obviously.
Yeah.
But we got to see the men show up as a group as supporting the lead. Mm-hmm. This is a case of the women are not supporting the lead. They are attacking him for the drama they've created. So it's a challenging situation to see Hannah Brown get so supported by the guys she was with, for the most part. And then Peter, who was one of the supporting men in that case, get attacked from all sides for just existing as the Bachelor.
Do you think that speaks to like gender?
100%. It's
I
a
hate
really
that
this
so
show's
much.
got this show has a lot of problems with the way we portray
and
gender.
Today's episode, or this week's episode, was really much. I feel like so much of that was expressed and shown.
Big oof.
Oh, big oof is real. Yeah.
Well, and so that gets into the episode itself. Peter pulls Natasha immediately after apologizing like 9 times. He begins by apologizing again to Natasha, and she talks about how she's annoyed at him for the Alea situation, which she helped create.
Yeah.
It's bullshit that he has to apologize for this.
I don't think it's bullshit that he has to apologize overall. I think that he did make some choices that he can say, I'm sorry for.
Mm-hmm.
However, this montage of apologetic Peter,
it was brutal.
It was not. It's not fair to him, and it
That's
truly like. It's an all or nothing thing, right?
Right.
So, like, instead of saying, yes, there are things that he can apologize for, and the women also contributed to it, they made it seem like, well, the women are right. He really screwed the pooch.
Well, and he even phrased it that way. He says, I see it now. I was wrong. I was this. He can I take back what I said. He can apologize for how it went down, the whole situation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry this happened.
Like
the show has been
roasting.
challenged. I'm sorry for the way this played out. And let's move on. Instead, he's taking full responsibility for all of it, which a lot of it was done to him.
And because of the way that it was produced and edited and the montage, as a viewer, you are now looking at Peter as someone who doesn't have a backbone, someone who doesn't know what he wants. And later in the episode, you see that's not true. But I was watching this episode and I was like, he's fucking confused. He doesn't know anything about what he's talking about. Like, this is the worst Bachelor I've ever seen. And then 2 hours later, I was like, I love him. You know? And like, it's really fucking confusing as a viewer to experience that too. And I feel like they really did a disservice because of that.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down that it really looks like the show is trying to reset by humbling the lead, making him apologize, and then creating a clean slate across the board, allowing the women to basically, like, remove responsibility for what they did leading up to this by humbling the lead, and then they kind of move on from there and try to say, okay, now we're going international. Let's kind of forget what happened.
Yeah.
So we go in, the episode really resets when this rose ceremony happens, which I actually completely forgot that that's where we left off. He like goes to hand out roses, and I was like, what? Oh,
Did I miss something?
So Kelsey and Victoria F already had roses. If you hear barking,
There's a dog.
that is the adorable Toby.
He just would be a little distracting for the show.
You would adore him. Perhaps we can actually, you know what we'll do? If you follow The Right Reasons on Instagram, our next post will be a picture of Toby for this episode so that you can all see the gloriousness. So Kelsey and Victoria F already had roses, as Toby is letting you know. And then he hands out roses to Madison, Sydney, Natasha, Lexi, Hannah Ann, Sheann, MyKenna, Victoria P, Kelley, and Tammy. So going home is Deandra, Savannah, Kiara, and he had already sent home Alea, which I don't feel the need to recap at all.
I found it very interesting that in the bar last night, the crowd booed when Victoria P got her rose.
Yeah.
I found that very interesting.
I felt that inside. I just kept it inside, but there was an audible like woo when Hallie says this season has gone to shit. Cassie says it was hard to watch this episode. It got worse and worse to the point I almost had to turn it off. There was a lot of girl on girl crime this episode. As one of my friends, Jen Kem, would say, there was a lot of pink slime being tossed around. Yeah. I like to credit her for that because it's a great term. It really depicts what's going on. And then he tells them that they're going to Costa Rica. And
Hooray.
I'm really proud of myself. I was like, I know they're going there.
unlike Cleveland, they were actually excited.
Well,
I can't imagine why.
I still feel bad for the city of Cleveland because they were clearly supposed to be like, oh my God, that's amazing, that's exciting, and then it was just bad. So it comes time to go to Costa Rica, and here's my confusion. So I'm still very confused as to why we get 2 episodes this week, because I thought this episode would be derailed because Peter smashes his head open, because we knew he gets injured at some point. He's got that big thing on his head, scar at the end of the show. I figured we'd see him on the middle of the date fall on his face, and not that I was looking forward to it, but I was genuinely curious. And instead of getting something that I felt would really be rewarding and storytelling around how he smashed his head open, he just does it in this really awkward way where he's like, there was a puma.
I hated this so much.
I mean, your point about how it... Go ahead.
I was so frustrated. I was like, you literally have been depicted, maybe not rightfully so, but depicted as someone who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, and now you're gonna enter a group date where you have a split head and you're gonna tell a lie to start it off. Like,
not a good optics,
I get that
man.
It was supposed to be funny, and I'm sure that it was very produced. I'm sure, but I just don't understand. Like, I think the actual story is funnier. So why not?
Absolutely.
Why not lead
Not
with
only
that?
the dramatic reenactment of the glass smashing into his head, was amazing.
But
so
the security camera footage.
the security camera footage of it actually happening it's just the funniest thing. And like, obviously that's very excruciating and painful. He's got a permanent scar. Like, that sucks. However, really fucking funny to watch.
It was so funny. We watched it like 3 times.
We had to rewind
especially because like we've all bumped our head and had that immediate like jerk back reaction when you hit your head, and he just happened to be holding a glass in the trajectory of his head. And God, that had to have bled so much. Glass wound in the head, that bleeds so much. God, that was...
So we see that, and Sydney gets the one-on-one date. And at this point in the episode, the way that things are being shown to us as viewers is that Kelsey is starting to experience negative emotions. And I say that way because I truly do not believe that any emotions are negative. I don't. I think that some emotions are more challenging to feel. They are more uncomfortable, but we cannot feel joy unless we have felt sadness. We cannot know what love feels like unless we have experienced jealousy and heartbreak and fear. And I don't think that emotions can be positive or negative. I think they just are. So I say that because the way that Kelsey is starting to be depicted at this point is she's experiencing all these quote unquote negative emotions, and everyone around her is seemingly not and just chilling. And Sydney goes off on the one-on-one date, and then yeah.
So we get a quick cut of, speaking of Kelsey, this is interesting. And it shows, this is a great example of how produced the show is, because when you see the contestants sitting around talking, that's the producers put them together. Like, they probably aren't actually, they probably aren't sitting there. Well, I don't think they call them girl chats when it's the Bachelor.
That's what they're called on the,
I'm saying that when it's the guy, I don't think when it's the Bachelorette season, they're called girl chats.
Sure.
They're just facilitating conversation.
No, but on
anyway,
this,
it's called girl
chat.
chats. So we see Hannah Ann and Kelsey just shooting the shit about Peter, which is super weird because didn't they hate each other last episode because of the whole champagne thing?
So I forgot about that.
And that's what I'm talking about. So it's so heavily produced, and that is my challenge of this episode, is that we're starting to see, because of the way they've shown and focused on the drama around Alea and various other people, we've missed out on some of the things that would make a lot more sense had we seen them, because we get into the date with Sydney, and Peter's talking about how she's been like a rock and super supportive, which I haven't seen, because all I've seen is how she began the instigation of the Alea drama.
Because that's what was shown to us.
She straight up attacked her and created a lot of that drama and made fun of her for being a pageant girl, which, by the way, she is a pageant girl also, which makes her kind of look like shit in that case. So it's confusing for me to see Peter be like, you're been a rock, and be like really supportive, when we've seen her actually be instigating a lot of the problems.
I think that what he's referring to, though, is that he has mentioned multiple times that he appreciates transparency and honesty, and he sees that in her. And maybe that what he's seeing is obviously not, like, some of the way she handled stuff with Alea was catty, sure. And I get that they're in a circumstance where that probably gets amplified a shit ton more than they would in normal life. Totally. But she's been really honest with him, and I actually like her for that reason. And I understand how, when, especially given his past trauma and triggers of his personal season and being worried that people aren't probably there for the right reasons.
We got like 4 or 5 mentions this episode too. It was pretty good.
But I think I would be in his shoes. I would be looking for someone who is upfront and expressing how what they're seeing and being transparent. Valid. And I really like her for that reason.
So I agree, and I agree with the take on why Peter likes her. I think that is actually like I hadn't even really thought about it through that lens. Yeah. I don't like how she has handled any of it. I think that perhaps her intentions are positive and she is trying to be that real, grounded, honest person. It bummed me out because on their date, during the dinner portion, she shares with him, and I know I'm jumping just a little. She shares with him a story that to me is incredibly important for everyone in America to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
And I, as a viewer, felt less compassion, and this is hard to acknowledge out loud fully, not to mention like publicly for anybody to hear. I had trouble. I instinctively had less compassion for what she was saying because I didn't know how over dramatic she was being because of how over dramatized the stuff with Alea was. And
Interesting.
That's interesting.
when I acknowledged that for myself, then I said, okay, no, I need to set that to the side and hear this story for what it is, because I truly believe that how she explained it is what happened to her, with the amount of racism in our country and the horrible things that were said and done. I believe everything she said, and I think that it was a very important story. What I did not like was that she had been already framed for me as this over dramatized, potentially lying person.
Well,
But I also would go as far to say that that's your interpretation, right? Like, because I don't see her in that light, and I'm watching the same show as you.
True.
And we're very similar.
Yeah. No,
so
that's true.
that's interesting that we have very different perspectives on a person.
So I had the same problem that you had with that, Rachel, but for a different reason. Here's my thing. I don't care for how Sydney has shown up for the rest of the show. I think that she created a lot of the problems, then backed away from it. I think she's a bully sometimes. She does pretty intentional, rude things to some of the other contestants on the show. Here's my problem with her story, because her story, I believe 100%, and I think that she has had to struggle not being a white person in Alabama. That's challenging, and I believe her 100%. It's super fucked up. Here's my problem, though. They did her dirty by showing what happened with Kelley. So we get a quick cut before the dinner portion. So after the daytime date, we get a quick cut of when they do the group date announcement. And Kelley gets the one-on-one. So we get the whole, everyone, blah, blah, blah. People bicker about group date stuff. That doesn't matter. But my problem is that Kelley,
this is not a Kelley problem.
No, this is not a Kelley problem.
This is a producing
We get an in the moment. This is a producer dick move, I think, to Sydney. So we get an in the moment of Kelley talking about how she's getting ready for the one-on-one. And she's kind of nervous about it because she doesn't really have a sob story in her life. And she's aware that sob stories and hard personal traumas have been used not as currency on the show.
On The Bachelor, it's currency.
It's hard to admit, but yeah, I'd say that there's a currency aspect to telling really, really hard stories as a way of proving that you're able to handle aspects of life. And they usually are done in a very strategic manner on one-on-one dates. And Kelley's like, I don't have a sob story. I've had a pretty good run of things. I work really hard to get where I'm at. I have a successful career. I'm really proud of myself. Like, I'm kind of in this happy place. And then we get the cut to Sydney telling this incredibly brutal story. And my problem is that invalidates Sydney's story because it trivializes everything.
I agree.
And yes, I mean, Kelley just saying what she said is she did nothing wrong. She was being honest about how she's like, well, shit, I've worked really hard to get where I am, and I'm really happy about it, and I'm stoked, and I don't really know. I'm worried that I won't be able to connect with him because I don't have something hard to share like that. And it makes Sydney's real problem and real hard story seem kind of pointless. And that's kind of fucked up.
Can I ask something to both of you? Because I feel like the term bullying has been brought up a lot this season.
Yes.
And as someone who has experienced bullying firsthand a lot as a child, like, I know what it's like to go through that. And so I also know what it's like to overcompensate and be assertive as a result. And so I think that's where my compassion for Sydney is coming from, because if she truly has gone through everything she is expressing, which I have no reason but to believe her, then to stand up for yourself in a circumstance and to feel like that assertiveness, like, I totally understand that. I'm not saying that the way she spoke to the women in certain moments was appropriate. Yeah. However, I think when you're in a heightened environment like that, like, I don't think any way that most of the women have been speaking to each other has been appropriate. And I think a lot of that is probably producer pushed. And so I'm feeling a lot of compassion for her given my personal experiences.
So here's my take on that. To me, from a therapeutic perspective, that is somebody who hasn't processed and gone through the trauma. 100%. So yes, I have compassion, and it's been years since she's been out of high school. She has the capacity to go to therapy. She has the capacity as an adult to work through what that bullying did and be responsible for her actions. It's a very similar argument, and I'm not equating bullying to abuse, child abuse, And it's a similar argument as, well, that person was abused as a child, so they didn't know any better and then abused their children. They can break the cycle, right? So like we're not taught how to do that, which sucks. Correct. And that not being taught how to do that is the larger societal issue here.
Right.
And that's not Sydney's fault. No. However, she is now an adult and needs to and she needs to learn how to not be a bully because she was bullied.
Right.
And what the difference is between assertiveness and being rude and aggressive. And we talked a little bit about this on the last episode, the difference between assertive and aggressive. Sydney has overcompensated by being aggressive instead of being assertive, which is what you're explaining you learned how to do, right? So there's a difference. Sydney is poking. Like when she walked up to Alea and said, "Do you even work?" That's not a real question.
No.
That is not a real question. That is it's antagonistic. Yes. For sure. Whereas if she had said, "Hey, I'm curious, what do you do for work?"
Right.
And actually wanted to hear the answer, that's a totally different experience.
Well, and it again, like this is towards the end of the episode, but it's not a great look for someone who's telling this horror story about being bullied with two of her closer friends on the show all cackling and making fun of somebody in a bullying antagonistic way. Like it's not a good look for someone who complains about it and tells a story to then be doing it on the same episode, especially when we get into it later on.
I also wanted to kind of share something totally separate, but I found it so interesting that Peter kept saying like she's such a rock because of her honesty and transparency, and then like was letting all the stuff with Victoria P slide.
Yes.
100%.
And to me that felt very hypocritical.
Yes, agreed.
Right.
Completely.
Well,
agreed completely. Also, there are some comments right now in the chat saying that there has been stuff that has come out since this episode aired that actually proves that Sydney was not telling the full truth, which is going to be interesting for all of us to read. We have not seen that yet. As many of you know, we really do our best not to say or to stay unspoiled. And sometimes that includes missing some of
Stuff
the
like
news
this.
that comes out after the episodes. Right. But please don't ever hesitate to send us this stuff on Instagram.
Yeah.
You can also email us at therightreasons@gmail.com. As long as it does not spoil the ending of the show, we are happy to see it along the way.
Well, and I mean, okay, before we get back into the recap here, let's just observe one thing. If I've, bullied somebody in my life, and then I go on national television, I'm probably not going to start throwing stones from my glass house. And this happens a lot on this show. It's happened several times in this season already. Someone is attacking someone else on the show for doing something for their career or portraying themselves in a certain way. And then when we've pierced the veil of social media, it turns out these people are kind of lying.
Like
and
Victoria?
Yeah, like with Victoria,
God, yeah.
where she was angry at Hannah Ann for being a model in a modeling competition when she's a model also. Liar.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's get back into the recap.
Well, and that makes me even more mad if that's true that she has lied about that story, because like
Right.
that just
Right.
Oh my gosh, because there's so much there for someone who actually has gone through something like that, and then to say it and it not be true. If
And,
that's
like,
true, that's
And it's
Do you think
so
you'll get
fucked
away
up.
with it lying on television? People are gonna. The
Yeah.
Bachelor franchise fan
What do
base
people think?
are.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's all private detectives because the way people find things out about you're not gonna get away with a lie on this show.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
Jed
not.
did it pretty successfully and still bit him in the ass in the end.
Oh,
And now he's like not gonna come to anything else. He's not invited to any of the Bachelor stuff for a reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
So-
we get to what? Tammy and Kelsey.
Yeah, so then the group date card comes.
One note. We put a picture of it on our Instagram and showed it in the last episode where they do the Microsoft Paint from 1995 butt blurring thing to cover up the side of butt cheeks when almost all of the breasts on the show are fully visible.
Yeah.
They cover just the side of the butt cheek. This episode, it gets so much worse than that one thing we shared last time. It's blatant and it gets really aggressive.
Yeah, so I'm going to let Amanda take the lead.
Yeah.
I'm going to set up the date, and then I'm going to pass it over to you.
Do we want to quickly talk about the Kelsey and Tammy interaction before the group date, though?
It's the beginning of it, yeah. So
It's the beginning
this is
of
when
it.
Kelsey is talking to Tammy, and she is emotionally struggling. From her perspective, this is what my take on it was. She's emotionally struggling with having stronger feelings than she thought she was going to have at this moment with Peter, and it's difficult for her to see him interacting with other people. And that is, in my opinion, a totally legit thing to have on the show. Yes, all day I can sit back and be like, what did you think was going to happen by going on The Bachelor? You know he's going to date other women. Yeah. You know you're going to have a thing. Yeah. How could you be so dumb? I can do that all live long day. And I can also say that that's got to be really, really fucking hard to actually have to deal with these feelings now because, let's not forget, they're completely disconnected from all of their creature comforts. They're disconnected from their friends, their family. They have no phone. I don't even know if they have music. They've got like one book and a journal and producers just like hawks circling them at any given moment. So it's got to be hard.
So at this point, we're really being shown Kelsey as this like off her rocker stereotype of like a female with quote unquote too many emotions, which was a very interesting thing to witness. And Tammy is being depicted as more of the stereotypical masculine role of like, why are you being so emotional right now? We're all keeping our shit together. So why aren't you keeping your shit together?
Why are your eyes leaking?
Yes, exactly. Like what? Yes. Okay. So the group date card comes. It is Sheehan, Kelsey, Victoria F, who again, remember last week we shared with you guys, she was to be
less than truthful.
Yes, she was the one who modeled in the White Lives Matter campaign, which is important information to know for the real life section of the state. Madison, Natasha, Victoria P, Lexi, Hannah Ann, Tammy, and McKenna. And the date card
says...
her
name's McKenna. It's just easier to say.
It's just, I like McKenna. So the date card says, let's capture our love today. And what this means is Kelley gets the one-on-one. So they go to the group date, and it is in the jungle in a stunning set of a waterfall in the jungle. It actually reminded me, Kyle, of the hike that we took in Hawaii to the waterfall. Yeah. It reminded me so much of that. I was like, beautiful. I want to go to somewhere where it's warm and be under a waterfall. It's so fucking cold everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Amanda.
Yeah, so my background for a second is very largely with women with eating disorders. I am a ex-binge eater and orthorexic, and I have worked a lot one-on-one with women in that space and body positivity. And the first thing that came out of anyone's mouth, and of course it was Victoria F's mouth, was, I regret everything I ate yesterday, which literally
I was actually upset that they aired that.
I am too, because it is completely irresponsible.
Yes, I agree.
And like,
can you?
I'm just.
Can you share why for anybody listening? Because the body stuff is not something that we typically, because it's not our lane. Yeah. I would love for you just to briefly explain why airing that is problematic for people, so that they understand if they don't.
Well, first of all, the fact that there is literally no body diversity from a contestant standpoint in the first place, and that they are doing this like cover shoot / like sexy shoot is what the woman who was describing it. It's like, oh, well, you are the perfect women for this. It's like, are you though? Like, because you're skinny? Like, what is your reasoning for this? Please help me understand. So that in and of itself is a giant problem. But to air something like that, I understand what it feels to feel that way. I have expressed those things in the past. I work with clients who express those things all the time because it is ingrained in our lives and through society that we need to look a certain way in order to be happy and accepted by society and worthy by others. And we have to be a certain size or not have cellulite or whatever the fuck. Even the fact that they are adding the bikini stuff is, from my perspective, completely inappropriate. I understand that it's a quote family friendly show, but bodies are family friendly.
Oh my God.
And they also provided the bathing suits that they're then subsequently having to cover up.
It makes me so angry. I'm like, our bodies are not inherently sexual. Like, we are not inherent. Anyways, I could talk about that forever. But the fact that they aired that, and all of the young women and every person who is watching that is now going to interpret that as, oh, I'm hearing this, and so that means that I shouldn't be eating X, Y, and Z, whatever they make in their brain, because if I have to do a photo shoot or if I'm going to be in front of a camera in order to be accepted, right? And this is coming from a woman who, by society standards, looks like the typical, she is a model.
She's beautiful.
And so is any body type, and yet you're watching this very thin, stereotypical, probably size 2 or 4 woman who is, as society depicted as this is the perfect body type, express that she is uncomfortable in her own skin. And so as a viewer, you're watching that, and then you're looking at your body in the mirror and going, well, if she feels that way,
then I should
too. And then that perpetuates disordered eating. If I had been 4 years ago and watching that, I would have probably not eaten today. And the reality of it is that there are probably hundreds of thousands of women who are in that position. And it makes me so emotional. So, so that is just, I think it is so unethical, to be honest. I think that entire group date was unethical. I think the fact that they don't have any body positivity on the show ever is unethical. And it just perpetuates diet culture, and it perpetuates body shaming, it perpetuates fat phobia, and it just makes me so angry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
get off my pedestal
now. No. I think
if we didn't like these mics so much, I'd ask you to like drop one. At the
right.
end of
I know. I think it's so important because it's, we talk a lot about diversity on the show from ethnicity, race standpoint. We don't talk about it from a body standpoint. And the truth of the matter is Amanda and I would probably not be cast on The Bachelor because, well, for many reasons, but one of them being,
are we married?
One of them being that that my arm does this foldy thing.
I have cellulite on my ass. Gasp.
Yeah, as do I. And even as we've been sitting here, I've noticed, we're on camera right now, right? And this dress keeps bunching up, and I can see it bunching. And I noticed myself, and if you want to notice, you can rewind this video.
It's happened 5 times.
I've noticed myself pulling it down because it didn't look thin. And that is, and I don't identify as someone who has body image or food issues. I don't. And yet I'm sitting here pulling my dress down to make sure that I don't even know what I'm making sure of. That's how deeply ingrained it is. So thank you for that. If there's anybody listening who's like, wow, you took that really far. That's what our show is. We love the show, and there are problems with it. And it's important that we can all acknowledge that we can love to watch something that's kind of a hot mess sometimes, and acknowledge the things that we really like about it and the things that they could be doing better. And I think that is a really important point.
And if
to
you
make.
agree
So
with the
thank you.
points that we make and want the show to change, feel free to send our show to ABC and tag them on social media and, get the word out more and more and more, similar to how all of you lovely people did to Luke P. on Hannah Brown's season around emotional abuse.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Thanks for
People
that.
started tweeting and sharing our show. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you are
Also,
on...
hi, Bachelor sub. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Bachelor Sub.
You're the best.
Hi, friends.
So...
Go ahead, Kyle. Yeah,
the photo shoot thing is just it's a problematic date in and of itself, right? And Kelsey does say something that I felt that was really I can say, well, it's so problematic because she's doing a lot of things that I don't agree with, and then I also feel very empathetic for her in this challenges she's facing.
It's the and, not or.
Right. Just because she does one thing I don't like doesn't mean that I dislike. Anyway, she says
No, don't throw that comment away, because I think that is something that we all do on this show especially, but in real life. Is this person good or bad? Are they quote unquote crazy or not?
Right.
Are they stable or not?
Oh, the word crazy. We're going to get into that.
And the truth of the matter is that good people do bad things and bad people do good things. And most of us are not good or bad. We're just complicated people because we're fucking people. So I don't want you to throw that away, because I think it's really important that you don't have to like somebody to acknowledge that they've done something positive, or
that's fair.
Or you can like somebody and acknowledge that they did something that could be better and that you don't like.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Anyway, Kelsey says something dumb, and I just wanted to point it out because it's a very.
I would not have said it
it's
that
a very
way.
It's a tone deaf comment that makes very little sense.
Yeah.
She says, "I don't like competing with women." Did you not just check the format of the show before you applied? Because this isn't like I got, I went out and had too many glasses of wine and then I signed up for a show and all of a sudden I got cast on it. Oops. This is a long process to get cast on this show, and at some point you have to realize that you're going to be in competition with these girls because it's a competition show, and if you don't like competing,
sure,
it's not a great show to go out for.
But also, like, in that same vein, I think that was more of her expressing something else without having the words to say it. Like
what?
This little, I wrote down that I feel like it's very clear that she is emotionally like struggling with where she's at, and she didn't expect to have these feelings. But I think it's a reflection of also probably past relationship experience. Like the way she interacted and what she was expressing so early on, especially saying like, I'm falling in love with you. Ooh. Which to me was like, whoa.
Little
to
oof.
Me expresses, and I actually really do like Kelsey. Mm-hmm. I just think that I wonder if she has been in very like is possessive in relationships and maybe has been in codependent relationships in the past. Because to me, the way that she's expressing herself around the other women and how that's struggling for her, it's like, oh, I wonder if this is triggering on another level than some of the women have maybe experienced.
That's definitely a possibility.
Absolutely. So we do the photo shoot thing. It's pretty dumb. Victoria F just starts making out Peter, so all the girls start doing it because I wrote down it's annoying and on brand for her to do. And then she wins the competition. From some metric, the Cosmopolitan person's like, we liked her the best. So my issue with this is that the women are being rewarded by someone who's not the lead of the show. What's the point of being the lead if you're not there to like dish out? If Gordon Ramsay's not making judgments at the end of cooking competitions, why are we watching his show? I'm there to watch Peter be the Bachelor, and yet Cosmopolitan's just picking the girl who was the most sexually aggressive during the photo shoot. That's what they're rewarding.
That's true. Very true.
And that's not like, I don't know if production told the Cosmo people to say it. Either way, I'm uncomfortable with the lead not being able to dish out judgment based on his experience of the show.
That's a very good point. That's
and that was the end
good.
of the thing. And then
that's the end of that date. We go to a commercial, we come back, and we have the evening portion. We have found out since then, and somebody also put this in the comments, Cosmopolitan pulled the cover once the information about Victoria came out, about her supporting a white supremacist group.
Thank you.
So thank you, Cosmopolitan, for that.
Having more confidence, integrity than ABC, who cast someone who did the photo shoot.
Yeah.
You say you've got FBI level background checks. I'd love to see you do it.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Continue. Sorry.
No.
I'm upset about that.
Like,
how do you miss it? And then the internet's like, oh, hey guys, FYI,
right?
White Lives Matter.
I mean, it was a similar issue with. I don't even want to bring Garrett from Becca's season into this because it was that was a different situation. Yeah. It was a similar issue to Lee on Rachel's season, who was an overt racist. Like, had tweets that he wrote. It wasn't like he liked a couple photos, like the Garrett thing. Yeah. He was overtly racist, and it took one Google search and a looking back through his Twitter history to find that.
Pretty
it was
low
not
effort.
hard. But yet, if you have herpes, which 90% of the population does, you cannot get cast on The Bachelor. So we're basically saying that racism is okay, but herpes is not. And then we wonder why we have so many issue and stigma around sex and STIs.
So yeah, we get a thing. Kelsey goes and talks to Peter at this point, and she tells him that she's having a hard time seeing him with the other women. And I appreciated her honesty in this. I think that she has been kind of run over by production and the way that she is portrayed at here. And we're going to get into the crazy comment from Tammy a lot. It's actually really problematic to use that word. If you're a fan of the TV show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, they explain it very well. I did do a little bit of research, and I have some screenshots of something that I want to read off about the word crazy.
Well, and this is kind of the point in the show where the narrative turns, and we start to, as viewers, experience Kelsey as actually not being, quote unquote, off her rocker.
She's grounded.
Yeah, and she's feeling her feelings, and we're seeing Tammy, who is judging that and putting her own beliefs, thoughts, experiences onto someone else and judging how she is processing her emotions.
Right. So I want to address the word crazy really quickly because we're going to talk about it more as it goes on because it gets thrown around a ton. But here's the problem with using the word crazy. And it's difficult because it's a societally comfortable term to use. It's thrown around for everything. Like, that movie was crazy. This is crazy. That person's acting crazy. So
Not
this is
acting crazy. That person is crazy.
And that's what's being used on the show, is that I think that using it in terms of like a movie or the quality of a dinner, like an expressive way, like that dinner was crazy good. It's problematic because I struggle to find where the term actually becomes offensive and where it doesn't. But when you describe somebody else with it, like Tammy is doing to Kelsey,
that's a clear
even
no-no.
though I really don't like Kelsey as a contestant on the show, but I can feel empathy for her in this, and that's why it's the and comment from earlier. This is from penmedicine.org is where I found this, so I wanted to make sure there was a little bit of actual research and not just some blog I read. The person being interviewed here talks about how the word crazy notes that they did wrong. Mental health perpetuates the word like crazy, including the idea that people with mental illness are divorced from reality, irrational, or incapable of making decisions. And using the word crazy suggests that. And that's also a huge problem when it comes to mental health, because similar to your comment about herpes, probably the majority of the population has some form of mental health anything.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean,
like
the therapist here can obviously chime in on that.
I mean, let's just acknowledge, and I think we can all acknowledge that. Even if it's not a diagnosable thing, right? We have all experienced anxiety.
Yeah.
I have not met a human being who has not experienced anxiety. They may not call it anxiety. They may have a different word for it. But if we really unpack it and get to the bottom of it, it's anxiety. That is mental health. If we experience stress and our behavior changes because of that stress and our cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, that is mental health. We as a culture have separated mental and physical health, which makes no sense because our brains are part of our physical body, which means that when our brains are having a reaction to something, that is our physical health. But we, at some point along the line, split them up and said, well, this is different. Right. Mental health is separate from physical health. And we used to cure mental health issues with orgasms and heroin. That is how we used to,
Those are not effective, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, the orgasms actually are.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's,
the orgasms.
At the time, though, they didn't know that it was actually correct in the way that it is, which is also
so at the time, the way, and this is just a fun side story for you all. At the time, women were coming into doctors' offices. Basically, now we can look back and we see that it's part of the menstrual cycle. They were experiencing mood swings, and they diagnosed that as hysteria. And what they thought hysteria was that the uterus was floating around a woman's body. So literally, like, one moment it would be where it is, and then the next moment it would be like where the heart is. And the way that they would cure hysteria is that the male doctor, the male physician, would give the female patient diagnosed with hysteria an orgasm.
That's so fucked up.
And that is
super fucked up.
That is the history of that word.
Right.
So again, just to not to go on a tangent around it, but
no.
like, this is the stuff that gets perpetuated when we use words like mental breakdown.
Yeah, and even beyond like the mental health scope too, like the word crazy getting thrown around so much by Tammy, like that is also a very triggering word around like the feminism movement. And from a gender standpoint, and for a woman to call another woman crazy. It's
perpetuating a stigma, and I'll go right back off the article here.
Yeah.
So the doctor being interviewed for this, last name of Curtis. So stigma, Curtis explains, is a situation that arises when two key ingredients are present: a negative stereotype about a group of people or condition, and actions people take to distance themselves from being associated with that group or condition. Stigma is a kind of social distancing that happens when you perceive a group of people as other or not like us. So when Tammy is saying that Kelsey's crazy, they're trying to, similar to how the group did this to Alea, they separated her as a weakling and are pushing her away and then trying to bring it to the lead to actually manipulate him into getting the person they don't want on the show off the show so they can move forward in their competitive game.
Yeah, and it's a reflection of also how different Tammy is, right?
Yeah,
like Tammy
100%.
obviously does not show up in her emotional life in that way. Very clearly, very evidently. And so she is interpreting Kelsey's reactions as
An
wrong,
expression of emotion.
as wrong,
Yes.
and
Right.
as other, as you expressed. And so it's like, well, this is not right, so I'm gonna call this crazy because then I don't have to deal with it anymore.
Right, which,
Because
you
I'm
know,
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
well, and the thing is, you can turn that right around on Tammy and say, "Oh, look, you can't access your emotions
You're
like
crazy.
us. So
I mean,
you're
I'm
the
not saying
distant."
that.
Right, but
To
you see
clarify.
how quick and easy it is to turn that concept on anybody for anything. Anything you don't like about them, you can pick out.
Yeah.
And so
Well, and,
Tammy's throwing a lot of stones from her glass house.
And she didn't even take ownership. Like, she
100%.
claims to be this strong,
And having a backbone.
assertive person with a backbone who doesn't get emotional, which is not something to necessarily
of.
pat your back for.
And she also does when she gets, angry.
Sure, which is great. Good. That's awesome. Access your emotions, sister. Like, let it all
Yeah.
out. Like,
Yeah.
but the fact that, like, she then doesn't own up to it when Kelsey
Right.
very clearly and very intentionally comes back to the girls and asks.
Yeah.
You know,
And
she's
So-
and calmly, super
Well, and
chill. Yeah.
let's get there too. So Tammy goes to Peter and starts saying some stuff about Kelsey's drinking and emotional outburst. And
She
wait,
calls it an emotional breakdown.
I think she said a mental break.
Mental
breakdown.
breakdown. Mental breakdown.
Which let's just acknowledge for a second, that's not what it is. Additionally, the show, for better or worse, I always am a little confused actually, does have a therapist on set at all times. I don't really know what this therapist is doing, but if there was a real mental breakdown, an actual mental breakdown, a separation from reality, the therapist would be there. Kelsey would not be on the show.
Yeah. It's also, it's kind of like how the term bipolar gets tossed around to
yeah.
describe someone who's moody. That is not what bipolar is. It's these terms, and a lot of times, we'll say, well, that's just semantics, or, stop nitpicking. The thing is that our language is our primary way of communicating. And when we use words that don't mean the thing that we're trying to communicate, it perpetuates incorrect stigmas and just incorrect definitions, right? If you know somebody, or you yourself has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, you know what that's like. That is not someone who is moody. No. And it is both disrespectful to the person with bipolar disorder and the person without bipolar disorder to use that term to describe something that it's not. So anyway, please continue.
So Tammy goes to Peter, tells him that Kelsey's been, she was really, really drunk, and she was just talking shit about the girls and being, like, acting crazy. And here's my problem with this, and this is, I think, one of the reasons Peter's faced criticism is that he has been fairly wishy-washy on this season. It's my opinion that he has a lot of people-pleasing tendencies. He wants everyone to like him. He's also, I'd like to say, I think he's still struggling with coming off of Hannah Brown's season and seeing Luke P get away with being a giant piece of shit to everybody and be rewarded for it up until a certain point when Hannah finally sends him home. I think that he's so worried about that because in the moment interview, he talks about what red flags are what to what people, and he's really confused about how come people keep coming to him with red flags when he's trying to figure out what his own red flags are for people. And it's my challenge of this season and seeing criticism about him is that he's being manipulated by the women who know that his fears are someone lying to him. Because multiple times already, we're in episode 5? Mm-hmm. Every episode, someone's come to him and say, someone's really probably not right. They're not being honest with you. The honesty thing has been a constant theme, and it's been fucking over Peter's brain. Like, it looks like it wears on him. Every episode, he's exhausted by the end. He said sorry a million times. It's not a good look.
So let's just take a pause here. I want to honor our sponsor of the podcast and the show. This is also a really wonderful time. If you are watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and click the thumbs up button. It lets us know you're here. It lets other people know, hey, this video is pretty cool. And let us know what you're thinking so far of this recap. I know that this topic has gotten, this episode has led to some more intense conversations. Unfortunately, that is really the focus of this episode, and we'll hopefully be able to focus on more of like the relationship perspective, and we'll get to it when we talk about Kelley and Peter. Anyway, our sponsor is Stand Up New York, which we are normally on their stage using their incredible setup. We want to thank them so much for having us. If you are in the New York area, it is a wonderful comedy club on the Upper West Side. They have had people like Jerry Seinfeld. They have had Chris Rock, Hugh Jackman, Jane Lynch. It is an incredible place to go. Jeremy Piven is a regular there. Go check it out. Donnie Zolden, who is the owner, is just one of the most salt of the earth, amazing human beings, and you're supporting a family business when you go. And I think that that's really cool, because not a lot of comedy clubs these days are family owned, and it's truly him and his family that own it, and it's an incredible place. So thank you. Big shout out to Stand Up New York. Even though we're not in New York, we're in Chicago today, so thank you to Amanda's apartment for having us. And let's get back into it, and don't forget to click that thumbs up, guys.
Yeah, so, Peter's now having to deal with more stuff as a result of the women attacking each other. So Kelsey comes back to the group, and she's pretty pissed that some stuff's been said about her behind her back.
I would be so
very
mad.
justifiably upset.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I did write down that, so she gets confrontational with the other women and the other contestants, and she starts defending her crying and emotional reaction to things. I wrote down, it's not that the crying is not the issue, and I think she's missing it a little bit here because she's so emotionally engaged in the situation. My issue is not her crying. It's the fact that she's blaming the other women for what's happening for herself. She is blaming the other women for just the situation in and of itself, and that, I think, is the issue in what she's saying, and that's my problem when she's, addressing the other contestants. It's not the crying that's the problem. It's how she's blaming others for her own problems.
You think Kelsey's blaming the other women?
I think that instead of representing herself, and just being like, hey, someone's talking shit, I don't really know what's going on, which she did for a bit, there was a portion of it when she starts she starts doing what a lot of people do when they're under pressure, and they start focusing on someone else. They're externalizing and projecting what's going on the others, rather than just saying, I'm really, really pissed off, someone's lying, and I'm angry about it. She started attacking the others because that's sort of where she got to in that conversation.
I didn't
see
that at all.
No.
Yeah, I saw it as
I wrote it down for a reason.
I saw it as her expressing that she was frustrated that her name was brought up, and she wanted to know who talked about it. Yeah. And that was it. Like, that's to me, that's how it read. And
well, she said her words were, so do we want to talk about who said I was emotionally unstable today? Yeah. And Tammy, who claims to have this backbone that she has criticized other people for not having, does not stand up and say it was me. And frankly,
not a good look.
That's not. It's very hypocritical.
Right.
So Lexi communicates pretty calmly to Kelsey about what was going on, and what I didn't like about this interaction is that it continues to escalate through the whole episode, and we can get into that later. We gotta move on, but they were all not saying the same thing, and there was just so much like, well, I would do it this way, so therefore the way you're doing it is wrong, instead of, I don't understand, can you explain to me what your experience is? They started talking a little bit about her drinking, and then later on they address a pill popping thing, which we'll get to. And it was just, I felt very bad for Kelsey. Again, similar to Kyle, I don't necessarily think that Kelsey is great for Peter. I don't think that they're a great fit together. I think that Kelsey needs to do some internal work and healing on herself, and I think that she was put in a very awful position. And there is nothing wrong with crying. There is nothing wrong with expressing your emotions. I call it emotional sweating. If you're in the gym and your body needs to release heat, you sweat. and you're not like, oh God, my body, I'm so embarrassed, I'm sweating at the gym while I'm working out. If you're going through an emotional experience, you need to release those emotions. And as humans, part of the way we do that is through liquid out of our eyeballs. That's it. Like, it's not.
And it's healing. It's cathartic. Like
100%.
And some people don't cry a lot, and that's totally fine. And some people do, also fine.
Yeah.
Period. End of story.
Yes,
So
exactly.
before we
Let's
get
move
to
on.
Kelley's one-on-one, here's something that I wanted to pull out of the episode, and it's actually one of my favorite parts of the episode is. So Peter's been raked over the coals. He's had to apologize to everybody like 4 or 5 times for things that really he didn't have to apologize for. However, we don't see Hannah Ann very much this episode. We do get one moment with them where she's like, I know that this has been difficult for you. She empathizes with him. And she's like, I know that you've been working really, really hard to show up as yourself. I also know that when I'm with you, I want to make sure that I'm myself and I'm not talking about the drama and I'm not bringing other girls up. I just want to make sure that my time with you is my time with you, and I'm working really hard to do that. I'm paraphrasing. She didn't say exactly that, but that was the overall message, which is her taking something that Rachel and I are big fans of, radical personal responsibility. She acknowledged to Peter, to his face, hey, I'm going to work really hard to keep our time contained. And guess fucking what? She gets the group date rose.
As deserved.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's so important to focus on because instead of doing what everyone else is doing, she takes the time to be with the lead and say, hey, you and me, this is our time. I'm here for it. I'm here for you.
It speaks
Let's
to her
make
maturity
out.
for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's make out.
I also think that, a lot of times we culturally equate age with maturity. And I think that, it's very easy to look at Hannah Ann and say, oh, well, she's 23, right? Yeah. She's 23. She's a model, X, Y, and Z, and then put these like ideas and judgments of, well, that means X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And to watch the 23-year-old model out mature almost everyone on the date in the way that she handled things, again, at least what we were shown, was really refreshing. I was like, you go, 23-year-old Hannah Ann. Like, she is there for him, and it's very evident that she likes him. She is interested in him, and I agree, Kyle, the way that she expressed herself and took that personal responsibility was fantastic. Yeah. And she hasn't gotten involved in any of the chaos. It looks like in the preview that we got that finally she kind of cracks, which, I mean, let's be honest, like I think everyone cracks at some point in the process.
Yeah.
Which good, like you have feelings. But it was really nice to see Hannah Ann not be just this like
one note.
Yes, which she has been kind of depicted as.
For sure.
And the show also put a target on her back from the very beginning.
100%.
It was like, here's this beautiful 23-year-old. Here's the first impression rose. Here now she gets this. Here now she wins
Now the
this.
champagne situation.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, like she was just, I thought it was wonderful.
Should we move on to Kelley's one-on-one?
Yeah, this was cool.
This was hilarious for multiple reasons. One, she was not excited.
No.
Like, she was clearly like, oh, I guess I'll go. And it was just like, okay, here we are. We're going into this. And then the date was epic. Yeah. And it was just like this amazing. I wanted to go on this date. I was like, I want to get some shaman rituals. Like, this looked so fun. And like the melting of the candles and everything. It was so
the maze thing was so cool. Like
yeah,
like using verbal communication to guide someone through a maze. Like,
I was so into it.
And I was just like, girl, at least embrace the thing. And she was like, there's a squirrel.
And so
she
she's
couldn't even be present for like her one-on-one with Peter, which like I really like Kelley. Like I think she's my favorite contestant, hands down. Like she seems the most grounded and just like, normal, quote unquote, person on the show. But I was like, girlfriend, at least pretend like you're having a good time. Or maybe don't. I don't know.
It was
so weird.
It was very evident to me that she is navigating what she wants and how she wants it and like what the process is. The part that really drove me nuts was the lizard thing. So they're sitting there and they're having, but like, same
thing.
They're sitting there and they're talking about their intentions, and he's really sharing like his feelings, and he is like locked into her. And all of a sudden, she breaks eye contact, and she's like, "Oh my God, there's a lizard right behind." If I were in Peter's shoes, or in anyone's shoes that was sharing my thoughts, feelings, hopes, dreams, and the person that I was talking to is like, "Oh my God, look at that tree waving behind," I'd be like, "What?
You don't care.
Why? Yeah. Like, do you not? Okay, I guess you don't give a fuck about what I'm saying." And like that, we got a lot of, and you mentioned this while we were watching it, we got then what we have seen as the most articulate Peter has been around his needs and desires and wants, in him articulating, like, I need to understand what she wants and how she's feeling, because if this kind of like backing off resistance things continues, like, I'm out.
I also think this spoke to the fact that he was able to articulate so clearly around her, speaks to his capacity for it, yes, but also his like of her. Like, I think he really likes her. To me, this like pushed her right into the front runner standpoint from my perspective, because he has been wishy-washy with basically every other woman, like, not every, but almost. He has been so unclear about his perspective and struggling in that space. But with her, he was like, I know what I want here. And if you're not ready for that, okay, tell me now, because I don't want to get my heart further invested. And to me, that speaks volumes about how he feels about her.
Totally.
So I've got a whole tinfoil hat theory on this situation.
Of course you do.
So here we go. Here's the thing. That's my tinfoil hat.
I want to make you a tinfoil hat.
This is so I don't know. Tinfoil hat theory is important. This is something that I do with Rachel just at home. Is that I'm okay? Hold on. I know what I'm gonna say is a little out. So let's put it on. Tinfoil hat theory. She is the only contestant who does not need this show at all. Even the girls who are like, I don't know, but I want to stay on as long as possible because I know if I can scoop up 100,000 more Instagram followers before I get kicked off, I can make some money off of this or establish myself. And that's not a bad thing. That is part of the show. And it's a couple years ago, it was looked as a bad thing. But now let's just be honest.
It is.
You're there to get Instagram followers.
And to go on Bachelor in Paradise.
100%.
Yeah, it's an audition.
And that's okay. However, this successful lawyer doesn't need the show and has pretty openly questioned whether or not she even is supposed to be on the show. She's been a little bit resistant and hesitant to really embrace the whole thing. And Peter senses that. And he knows that she doesn't quite play the same game as everybody else. Here's what I find really, really interesting about Peter and her conversation. And this plays into my description of her in that way, that she doesn't need the show or really want to be on it, in my opinion. He actually matches the emotional maturity of who he's talking to. You watch him talk to Sydney, and he's like, nah, this is funny, and we're making out, my head hurts. You see him talk to Kelley, and he is locked in, he is confrontational, he's confident, and he is very mature in the way he carries himself. You watch him with McKenna, and they're just dancing by a fireplace and fooling around.
Yeah.
He meets who he's with at their emotional maturity, and while I don't know if that is a lifetime positive, if you're not able to represent who you are around all the people you're around. However, I've seen him go from person to person, because you see him talk to a million different girls each episode, right?
That is so
He
astute.
meets them where they're at. And so when she's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm here, he's like, why are you here? I want to know about this. And she's pushing him to be a little bit more confrontational about how he's concerned about her. He's having to reach for her, whereas everything else, he's had to apologize and they have to reach. But she's showing up a little bit in a way that he's not quite prepared for. And it's really, really interesting. And I realized that only rewatching the episode this morning, because I couldn't take full notes at the bar last night, he meets people where they're at to make them, I think it's a tendency from his people-pleasing thing.
Yeah.
He meets people where they're at to make sure that they're comfortable. And yet she's more... maybe I would say confident and a little more mature. Thank you.
Yeah.
No,
Can we
like,
do a mic drop?
Tinfoil hat, yeah.
Seriously.
Tinfoil
Take it off.
hat off.
It's not
Um,
tinfoil.
need it.
It's astute.
Yeah.
AF.
And you see it even at the very I started thinking back, you watch him talk to Hannah Brown on the date that she interrupted because they had to have their whole breakdown of their relationship. He's meeting her where she's at.
That's so true.
And he's quiet and calming
Which
and comforting.
is a skill and also a problem.
100%. It's
And
not
I-
a good or bad thing, but it's
well,
something I've noticed here about how he shows up.
I think it. Can I have one of these? I think it can be good and bad.
Yeah.
I know as a therapist, that's actually a skill that
You need.
you need, and you. There is a class about matching somebody's language, energy, dictation. Like it helps someone to feel more comfortable. Very easy example is if a teenager were to walk into my private practice and start saying, fuck this, fuck that, fuck this, I may use the word fuck more because that will help that teenager to feel comfortable 100%. With me. Whereas if someone comes in and they're, very like, no foul language, very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Profanity?
No. Like,
proper?
Like, thank you. Yes. Sure. Like proper in their language. I may be more like that. Now, I think that where it can be an issue is if you don't know who you are.
If you lose yourself through it.
Yeah. So like if I were to then leave my therapy office and not know who Rachel is.
Yeah.
That could be a problem.
And I think that speaks to why we're so confused.
Yes.
Because I don't think he does.
See, and that's what I don't know. He could know who he is, and he's just matching them to get to know them.
Yeah.
We don't have enough data on him.
Conscious thing he does.
Oh, it's certainly not conscious.
It could be.
You think so? You think he's in that space?
I don't know him well enough to answer that. Sure. If I could sit down with him for an hour, I think that I could probably tell you.
Yeah.
And like, Peter, can we have coffee?
Yeah.
Anybody want to like tweet this out, Peter? Coffee date with me. It's on me. I would love to talk to you. Also, you're very cute. I know I'm married, but you're so cute. Hi. But hi. And hi.
Hello.
But I do think that it's a skill that is positive and negative depending upon situation.
But it also speaks to why maybe the girls are confused. Because a lot of them have been saying, well, like, he's acting this way. And then they are bringing up, like, it concerns me that I'm hearing this and I'm seeing this. And it's like, well, yeah, that makes a lot to now, given that Kyle, that blew my brain. Yeah. My brain is blown.
My one insightful thing per episode. So what's really interesting is that
damn, Kyle.
She puts him he's uneasy around her because he has a natural Kelley makes Peter uneasy around her because he's naturally a people pleaser. He wants to do nice things for people around him. She doesn't need it from him. Mm-hmm. She is a complete person without him. Mm-hmm. And she chooses to spend her time with him.
Almost to a detriment.
Absolutely.
It is.
I agree with you.
I think that part of how she comes off to me is Toby just made the weirdest sound ever outside the door. And now he knows that I'm talking about him on live YouTube. I think that it can be a detriment to be almost too independent and so to the side of I don't need anybody to complete me. Yes, you don't. And if you want to be in a relationship, there needs to be vulnerability.
But I don't know that that's what's happening here because she expressed in the conversation on their one-on-one when they had the dinner, like she was expressing to him that him rewarding the drama really bothered her. Yeah. And if you're witnessing that and that's your lens that you're seeing the situation through, I totally imagine how like being in her shoes, I would start to back away and completely question if this person was for me. And so I think that given what she's expressed, at least, that's why she has kind of closed off a little. And also why she turns around later at the end of the date and is like, I appreciate you owning where you're at, and she's like, I'm working on this and I see the connection here. And I really do actually want to continue and participate with this, further. I think to me, it's just, she's seeing something that was a red flag for her.
And I agree with that completely. And I also get the sense that she is fiercely independent.
100%.
And has a little bit of struggle with the vulnerability piece, which is why she saw the lizard while he was opening up to her.
Totally.
Right? Because like
100%.
It's hard to be emotionally connected if you're uncomfortable with any vulnerability.
Sure.
Well, and also, I mean, don't forget, like she's, I think, partly regretting the format of the show because she talks about how she's telling Peter, I'm just sitting there in Cleveland and wondering, what am I doing? Yeah. Like, I think that she's observing the decisions that were made in a little bit of a regretful way and then also being curious if she can actually go the distance of the show. What I really liked about her conversation is that unlike many of the conversations Peter's had with the other contestants, she spoke from her perspective, and she didn't fall back on the very common trope of the show. Well, everyone in the house is saying this.
Yeah.
And we're all upset about that, and we're all this. She's like, I don't like that you reward the drama. I don't feel good about this. I'm this, I that. She uses I statements, which is very emotionally mature and indicative of someone who's very...
Oh, no, I like her a lot. I do. I think she's great. This was also the point in the episode that I was like, oh, cool, it's over. And then it continued for another hour, and I was like, what's happening?
So she
we
gets
had
a rose.
closed out our bar tab. I was like, we're ready to leave. And then it continued, and I'm like,
one more round.
What's happening?
So she gets the rose, obviously, and they make out in a hot tub waterfall, and they blur out her butt.
Yeah.
Commercial break, and then we start the next segment with frogs humping.
I will say, cutting back to Peter. So when we come back after the frogs humping, we cut to Peter's room, like where he's been staying, and Kelsey comes over.
Gamble too by that.
Absolutely. The view from his room,
stunning.
Holy shit.
Well, I was
going
to say, I
they
feel
did,
like
whatever hotel this is, did a great trade out for this, because I will absolutely Google
100%.
Bachelor Costa Rica hotel and then go.
Production.
So
really,
well done.
Yeah.
We'll go
I'm in.
together.
You sold me.
Well, they had to make it look extra glamorous after the tepid response to Cleveland, which I still feel bad for the city of Cleveland. Like, they kind of did them dirty, and then everyone's like, "Yeah, Costa Rica. Oh my God, it's gorgeous."
Well, I mean,
It's
Well,
Costa
yeah,
Rica
right.
versus Ohio.
yeah. What is the comparison here, Kyle?
I just feel
I
like
mean, even
it would have
people
been
who live in
kinder for them to be
Ohio
a
Are
little
like,
more.
fuck this.
Yeah.
I just feel like Cleveland got a little bit of the short end of the stick on this.
Okay, so let's talk about
You have
Kelsey.
strong feelings for Cleveland.
So I just want them to get fair representation.
You just have compassion for
They
Cleveland.
went through the effort of hosting the goddamn show, and they get nothing. When they did it for Virginia, they shot at Virginia's for Lovers a million
really
goddamn
have
times.
feelings for this. I'm
Well,
here
think
for
about it. They're putting like this in front of 20 million people, and if they're gonna have that kind of response to the city that's hosting the show, it's kind of shitty,
Okay.
in my opinion.
So, Kelsey goes to talk to Peter about what's been going on, and
Usually, this is a gamble on the show.
It
And
is-
This
it
often
is-
gets people sent home.
correct. She wants to express how she feels and what Tammy has said about her to the girls, because we get this conversation between Kelsey and Tammy, where Kelsey basically confronts Tammy, and when I say confront, I don't mean the way that a lot of people interpret that word, like an aggressive thing. She literally just talks to her and says, there's clearly tension here. I don't expect everybody to vibe in the house. I don't expect everybody to get along. And however, I would like to talk this through because clearly there's like something going on between us. And Tammy basically criticizes Kelsey for getting drunk and not just getting drunk one time, but like having a problem with alcohol and then emotionally being unstable. And this is that's what she says to Kelsey. And Kelsey, I applaud in this situation. I would have broken down into tears in this situation, especially given the environment and everything else around me.
And the volatility of things being said
Yes.
to you, like, those are...
She
You're
did
implying
such
a
a
lot.
good job of expressing. I think at one point she said something like, that's how you handle that. That's not how I process my emotions. So after this conversation, Tammy walks away, like locks herself in a room, which again, as the one who is criticizing the emotional expression, is interesting that she's the one that gets up and stonewalls Kelsey. Kelsey goes to talk to Peter, which frankly, I get that. You want to be accurately represented, and knowing how the rest of this has played out prior with the Alea stuff, I would not trust the other women to represent my experience to him.
Absolutely not. I mean, like, they played their hand. They're going to go behind your back and they're going to start spreading rumors and openly lie about what's going on and then attack you later on in a group format with backup if you disagree with what they're saying.
So she goes to Peter to basically tell him, I want you to understand my experience of this so that anything that is told to you by the other women tonight is not, like, is understood correctly. And I loved that she said this and acknowledged this at the top of the conversation because she explained what her intentions were from the beginning, so that he knew she was not there to shit talk other people. She was not there to tell him how horrible Tammy was treating her. She was very much focused on, I want you to understand my experience of this. Here we go.
100%. And Peter does a great job because she set the expectations. He empathizes and listens and matches her exactly where she's at. Super calm, very direct.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was super surprised at what happened because he's like, I really like you. This is amazing.
Really?
I was stunned.
You know why I wasn't? Because watching her handle herself in the Tammy conversation before her talking to Peter was my perspective of Kelsey completely shifted. Yeah. And I have so much respect for the way she holds herself, the way she communicates when she is in duress, because that is so challenging to literally be being attacked by another person. And someone saying you're doing this and this and this, which is not at all the case for her. And she is showing up with kindness and empathy and love when she's being attacked. And the way that she showed up with Peter, I was like, you are a front runner in my brain right now. I freaking love you. And it makes complete sense that he would see that and go, yes, like,
and then pull the rose out of nowhere.
I want this. It makes complete sense to me.
Where was that rose?
I think, to be honest, that was my favorite thing he has done on the show, is giving her the rose in that moment.
Wow.
All right. I can see that.
We would love to know what you all think. If you're watching this live, put it in the live chat. If you're watching this post, we would love to know, what do you think about how Peter responded? In this moment, I wrote down, Peter is the most empathetic bachelor I think I've ever seen, and I'm all about it.
Even more empathetic than Ben?
Yes. And similar to Ben.
I think Ben grew over time.
He
but
did.
Initially, maybe
Ben
not
empathetic now is like how Peter is now.
Sure.
So the way that I experience Peter is, his ability. Okay, words. Perhaps he is not the most empathetic person to be the Bachelor. His communication of his empathy is the most effective that I've seen.
Yeah.
So
I think it's his greatest skill, for sure.
Yes, like he will say,
he has a lot of shortcomings, but I think that is one of his greatest skills.
And I think that it's honestly really refreshing to see somebody with shortcomings that are very obvious as the lead. It's like, this is not a perfect Prince Charming person that you're getting some skewed view of. You're seeing him be a fucking human. Like, because if you're going to end up with him, he is going to make poor choices. We all do. We all have. And
that's a really good point, because I feel like we celebrated Hannah so much for that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I see so much criticism of Peter. And to be honest, I've been critical. And I think that's a really important point. Like, he is a person who makes, unconscious and conscious choices and operates as best as he can given the circumstances he has in front of him. And it's really valuable to see that.
Yeah,
for sure.
So Kelsey comes back with the rose, and I love what she did.
Yes.
She goes right up to the group of girls who were all like talking about Sydney's stupid ass rose, and how long the stem is. Like, I don't know. It was the dumbest conversation. Anyway, she walks back up and she's like, so I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but I got a rose. I'm saying, I talked to him about what's been going on, and what I really, really appreciate is that she knew she was just not throwing a grenade, so to speak, but she knew it was a thing that the girls would be talking about.
Of course. Well, how could it not be given the past?
Right. So she's like, I got the rose. I just want to address it right away, so there's no mystery about this. And then she kind of is quiet for a second. She goes, so I hope tonight goes smooth.
And then it's like
a bomb.
Yeah. And it made me so angry, because it's of course. And of course, it's immediately then going to as soon as we find out that the cocktail party no longer is happening, it's they immediately are like, this is your fault, bitch. And it's like, that's not her choice.
Right.
She did not make the decision to not have a cocktail party.
So Chris comes out and says, Peter knows what he wants. There's no cocktail party. At no point was he like, so Kelsey, you really fucked it up for you ladies, because now Peter's all about this. No. Chris Harrison, host of the show, says Peter knows what he wants. No cocktail party. And so the women who are less internally secure immediately attack Kelsey as the last person who spoke to him.
Which, now, I do want to acknowledge that from what we've seen from Kelsey, I would not be surprised if it had been somebody who she butted heads with who had gone to him, I don't think that Kelsey would have not participated in thinking that it was that woman's fault. I want to acknowledge
That's
that. Like,
fair.
I don't think that she is like above this. I think that obviously she's not. The way
sure.
that she handled the champagne situation with Hannah Ann, she can get caught up in
The
drama. And in this particular situation, this was not her decision.
No.
She took personal responsibility for her relationship with Peter. 100%. She was honest with him. He then made a decision after that. Whether it was based solely on that or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The fact is that it was his decision, and the women blamed a woman.
And the thing is it's a fear-based response from the women who are
Totally.
operating in that way, because they're terrified that they're not going to have the time they need, which is fair. And you want to blame something other than yourself.
Right.
So they do that.
And they've been blaming Peter for everything.
Right.
So, like, maybe they didn't want to blame him anymore. They were like, cool, new person to blame.
Right.
It's you now,
Yeah.
bitch.
Yeah.
So several things begin happening at this point, and one of it's my favorite, and one of it's my least favorite. And my favorite is maybe it's a nervous tick. I don't really know what it is per
my
se.
God.
But
Ready?
McKenna starts sticking her tongue out of her mouth constantly, and I don't know why.
It's not even out of her mouth sometimes.
It's like just rolling around.
It's like it's
If people were upset about this is the thing. If people were upset that Shakira did the tongue wagging thing at the Super Bowl, they better be fucking furious about this episode.
That is
because
real
McKenna's
life.
tongue is everywhere. It's just all over the place. It's ridiculous. What I don't like is that the girls start all fighting with each other. Kelsey, because she represented herself so well and has a rose, so they know they can't really pick her apart anymore. The focus shifts to Tammy, because turns out Tammy had been spreading rumors about the amount that Kelsey had been drinking, and out of seemingly nowhere, and we get a weird shot of Victoria P. about Kelsey taking pills in addition to drinking. Now, this is a
Yeah.
pretty volatile thing to say on the Bachelor franchise, because this is what got the whole drinking and consent conversation
With Corinne and
moved forward
DeMario.
because of DeMario. Corinne, where she had been taking prescription medication without the show's knowledge and drinking heavily because the drinking was monitored less back then.
So there was a moment in this, though, that I found to be incredibly hostile and inappropriate, and then B, I was very upset that it aired. So they ask her, what medication do you take? And she says, I take Adderall and birth control. And they aired it. And frankly, it's really no one's business what medication someone is taking. To accuse someone of pill popping or abusing their medication on a show, like if that happens, which in itself is really messed up.
Right.
The fact that they aired this about Kelsey, that is private information. I understand that in their consent contracts for the show that anything can be aired, so they didn't do anything illegal. Technically, she consented to this by being on the show. However, why is that important information for all of us to know?
Well, and the same problem is, so the fact that it was even said, like, we can all sit here and say that that's super, super inappropriate for them to ask, and we hold no judgment or even consideration over the medication that Kelsey takes. Here's the problem. Similar to the Jordan toxic masculinity stuff from Bachelor in Paradise, a certain percentage of viewers believe that now and believe that's a problem.
And that's the issue is, like, you know, okay, so we're live here on YouTube with like 75 people watching with us.
Hi, everybody.
I take an antidepressant. I am comfortable sharing that because that is a part of the things that I talk about in my life. If I were not comfortable sharing that, and on national television, girls who were trying to tear me down forced that to be aired in front of everybody, I would be devastated.
Yeah.
Absolutely devastated. It is so not okay to do that. And frankly, it's not even the other girl's business.
No.
Like, it's no one else's business what medication she's taking, and to essentially accuse her of being like addicted or abusing her medication. I the fact that it happened is one thing. I really don't like that they aired it. I really like it's.
I did appreciate
bothered
Kelsey's
me.
response to that. Like, well, what do you take? And she basically had a great clap back. She's like, Adderall and birth control. What's up?
Yeah. I mean, she
Like-
seemed comfortable with it.
Right.
given
However, I think the show was
circumstance.
irresponsible in the airing of it. So now, because the focus is off of Kelsey, now the focus is on Tammy. And this is the problem
Which
that
rightfully so, though. at this
100%. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that people just tearing each other down and arguing and the bickering is a waste of my time watching the show. I'm also aware that's a big part of it. So yes, I know that I'm signing up for watching it. Just like any contestant on the show knows they're signing up for a bunch of craziness. So here's my problem. Sydney told us this long story about how she was bullied earlier in this episode. Then she starts bullying Tammy. And she and Tammy are arguing and fighting. However, I use the word bullying because of the way she begins dismissively laughing at her, talking about her, and leaning on her friends around her, on Lexi and on whoever was next to her, to
Natasha.
use the group aspect to put down and attack Tammy. That's bullying.
And she calls her a psychopath and a crazy bitch.
Yeah,
She starts laughing, which if someone is arguing with me and they start laughing at me, that will send me right into the red zone. That is the most
Totally.
antagonistic and hostile way of approaching someone and so disrespectful. And for someone who tells this story that she told earlier in the day, it makes it really hard for me to give a shit because she's perpetuating something that she complained about.
So one of the things that stood out to me in this situation is that Natasha has been incredibly real, honestly, for better or worse. There have been moments where I've been like, yeah, Natasha, you say it. And then other moments where I'm like, oh. So for better or worse, she's been keeping it very real.
Which I appreciate.
And she even calls out Tammy for her motives about telling Peter about the alcohol.
Yes.
And I really appreciated the way that she did that when she was like, so you were concerned for Kelsey's well-being and you needed to tell Peter that? And then Tammy kind of catches herself and she goes, I needed to tell Peter that I saw alcoholic tendencies. Which, I'm sorry, are you credentialed in diagnosing alcohol
It was
abuse or addiction?
rough.
It was very strange.
Yeah,
Let me
it
just
was-
check the comments there. We're getting Sydney as a hypocrite. She started the whole Alea drama. Nisha said, heard on other podcasts that Sydney bullied girls in high school, including Hannah B. Wait a minute. Sydney went to high school with Hannah Brown?
Wait, what?
Well, they're both in Alabama, but Alabama's
shit.
big. I didn't really
Both
just...
pageant girls in Alabama too. Sydney, liar.
Well, here we are.
And Cassie says it was very High School Mean Girl. Yes, it was incredibly...
This whole season has been High School Mean Girl.
yes.
It has been so disrespectful.
Yeah. Like the girl-on-girl crime
Ugh,
is
it's
just
rough,
out
yeah.
of this world.
Tammy says one thing that I want to pick out of all of the things that were said, and it's something that happens a lot on the show, and it always bothers me. It really bothers me. And honestly, the age of the contestants is always under 35. And so
Except for in Jason Mesnick's season where we saw a 37-year-old woman.
Because
that's
we love
true.
Jason
Yeah,
Mesnick.
and if on Colton's season a 27-year-old is called a cougar, what would a 37-year-old be called in the show? Anyway, here's my problem. Tammy says, I gave up my entire life to be on this show.
I'm sorry. Hannah B. and Sydney were on the cheer team together, according to our chat right now.
Fascinating.
Wow.
Wow. Thank you for
Sydney.
Send us
Send us
the information so we can read all about it.
Yeah.
And see,
send us a DM
that
on
just
Instagram.
backs up what I was saying earlier about Sydney. She is lying. Anyway, so Tammy says she gave up her entire life to be on the show.
Didn't everyone?
No, you didn't.
Also, like, everybody gave up whatever they have going on.
That's not a measurement of any. That doesn't
yeah,
mean
but
that you're.
she exaggerates. Like that's what that is.
But it's still that's.
Oh yeah, it's a
that
ridiculous
term
comment.
makes no sense.
Yeah, of course.
It's. I gave my entire life at 24 years old to come onto a show for 3 months of filming
Wait.
to then move on.
Wait. But also, how about the opportunity of the show? Like,
for
you're
sure.
you're a house flipper,
Yeah.
right? You could get
That's
a
gonna
lot
yeah.
of business. This
Yeah.
is great for your career.
Well, it's not now.
Well, right. But, like, that's her doing.
That's your fault.
Like, don't frame it as I gave Amanda. That's you.
I was
Amanda's getting
literally,
feisty
what
over
I
here.
wrote was like, keep digging, Tammy. Like, keep digging your
Oh,
grave. Like, let's literally this whole episode is just Tammy going off and like.
And at the
I
beginning of
loved
the episode,
Tammy
you
before.
liked Tammy.
I was like, Tammy's slaying.
And I was like, Amanda, I'm sorry, this episode is going to really change your perspective. So we get to the rose ceremony because there's no cocktail party.
Wait, can we just talk about one line that
Yeah.
was my favorite line of the entire show, which is Hannah Ann saying, I want to know, but I don't want to know.
Oh, yeah.
Because she was like in the other room with Maddie and like was hearing all the drama and was like, do I need to? I can't. I don't want to engage. And I was like, yes. If that is not the feeling of this entire season, yes.
There's one other thing that's the feeling of the entire season. So it gets the rose ceremony time, and they're getting ready to do the thing, and then all of a sudden, McKenna's like, so first it's Tammy. Tammy interrupts Peter, and she's like, I need to talk to you. And they go off. And we get a cut. So then McKenna's like, I got to do it too. This is the mood of the entire episode. We get one brief, quick clip. And Madison is sitting down.
Oh my! Sitting on the floor in her romper, her red romper.
She's sitting on the little stadium thing. They have the girls stand on like the steps for the rose ceremonies. They're staggered. She is just sitting down.
It's so funny.
And that is exactly my reaction to the whole episode. Yeah. Like, I'm done. I don't want to play. This is over. I don't want to play anymore. Wrap it up.
Take my ball.
Yeah.
So Tammy goes and talks to Peter and just says some stuff, and then McKenna. So Lexi criticizes McKenna for doing it. I, however, think it's a pretty good flex to go up during the rose ceremony interruption and be like, can I steal you? Because, first of all, you're playing it like it's still the cocktail party. And when she gets back, Lexi's like, well, I guess you made your own cocktail party. If I was McKenna, I would turn to her and be like, fuck yeah, I did. I wanted the time, and I went and got it.
So that's the thing.
But also it felt, so here's, from a flip side, Peter set a boundary by not having a cocktail party and saying, I know what I want to do.
Oh, I agree with you.
And so to do that, both of them, they completely disrespected and disregarded a boundary he set.
I completely agree. I also think that being the second one to go is I hold them both responsible for doing it. And if somebody, I can imagine being in my Kenna's position and feeling like
your tongue is flying.
Well, yeah, my tongue is trying to explode. And seeing somebody else, right? So like we've been seeing her for the past few episodes be like, he's not going to get to know me. I'm freaking out.
I think they just kept her around for the tongueography.
Absolutely. And the fact that she goes to like steal him from Tammy. Here's the thing though, as Lexi, this is my issue. So I agree with the boundary setting thing from Peter's perspective. Yeah. And as Peter, I would be like, noted that these people don't respect when I set a boundary, and I'm going to notate that in my mind about them. And from Lexi's perspective, I also understand wanting to respect that and then being frustrated that the people who disrespected it were kept.
100%.
And she's also jealous of the fact that they did it and that they're staying.
Of course.
Because you don't know necessarily, like, Peter could interpret it, especially in the universe of The Bachelor. He could interpret it as they're going out of their way to let me know what's going on. It's not like in real life that would play out very differently than in the context of the show. Sure. So I think that there's like not a right or wrong with it on the show. I do think that in real life, yes, absolutely. It's like a very clear boundary disrespect thing. And I honestly am not stoked that Tammy got a rose. So we go to the rose ceremony, and Peter keeps, so Victoria F, Madison, Natasha, Victoria P, which, by the way, everyone again booed in the bar. Yeah. Mykenna and Tammy. So Lexi and Sheann go home, and Sheann does something that I hate vague things. So I know the term like vague booking is a thing that gets used a lot. I don't use the word hate lightly. I hate when people are vague in their communication and are very like ominous about it. And
be explicit.
Yes. Yeah. I really liked Sheann. Honestly, I didn't like her victim state and saying like, I keep not getting to talk to him, but she's not going to do anything. I think outside of that, she was fine.
Yeah,
like
fine.
there was nothing really overtly bad about her.
All we saw was her complaining that someone said Peter and not being confrontational.
Sure.
What I really did not like was she did to Peter, what a bunch of the women did to Colton last year. And she was basically like, there are some women in the house that are different with you than when they're, just watch out. What
and
the
she didn't specify. Like, she could have pulled him aside and been like, I'm concerned for you for these reasons with these people.
Right.
She could have done that.
And clearly she knows who she's talking about.
Yeah.
Like, she's not just vaguely saying.
Every season, yeah. It was
Yes.
it was high on Colton's season.
Yes.
But it does happen every season.
It happened
That's
like,
a good
3 or
point.
4 episodes in a row. Like, it kept happening to Colton.
It did not used to happen.
No,
Yeah.
not in the olden days. Not
No.
with like Sean and
Yeah.
Jason
Like,
and all the goodies.
Sean Lowe was not given warnings about what, not to my remembrance. or
Because
Ben
the
Flanagan.
women on that show were like so much more grounded in who they were.
Yeah.
Like, you go back to old seasons and it's such a different, I don't know, maybe it speaks to like where we're at as a societal
Unfortunate. I agree.
space, you know, but here we are.
So that's
the preview for
yeah.
next week. This episode to me was so from the perspective of like commentary and getting to dig into like these serious issues. It was meaty, and
Oh, yeah.
I like that for
Some
that
heavy
perspective.
stuff,
Like
too.
it's
Yeah.
some heavy shit.
That's the shit to talk about today.
Yeah, we did.
Exactly. From a viewer of The Bachelor perspective,
exhausting.
it was really tiring. I don't want this focus on just girl drama.
Can we just end? Can we just get into like actually building relationships
That's what I
and
wanna
communicating effectively
Yes.
and being kind to each other? What a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I want is to be able to talk about relationships again. I
Yeah.
don't want to have to explain bullying. I don't want to have to talk about why using the term crazy is, dismissive and stigmatizing. I don't want to talk about this stuff anymore. And I'm sure that you guys listening, thank you for being here. Yeah, Sean's season was a really good season. I'm sure that you all are kind of tired of talking about it too. Like
I don't know why there's be so much conflict between the contestants. Like with Luke P, it was obvious because he was a piece of shit.
I think
And-
this is the worst
Yeah.
I've seen ever.
I agree.
Like,
Well, and-
ever.
I don't remember.
And there's
a
not
season that's been like
any
this.
particular like when it comes to the Luke P thing, I think that it was as constant because it went on a lot longer and there was real problems. But,
But it was
that was
one person.
and it was a serious problem.
Correct.
Yeah, he was abusive.
Whereas this
This
is
is
a
just
bunch of like
Catty.
catty
It's high
I don't like the
backstabbing.
word catty, but it's,
Right.
that's the only way that I can really.
It's very much the plot of Mean Girls, the musical and the movie. And now the
musical came
Leads,
out.
movie,
yeah.
and now it's going to be the movie out of the musical out of the movie, which is going to be confusing. I don't know why they're.
So
Anyway,
I
that's,
feel like I had to take a shower after that episode. 100%.
real.
Wash it off.
for real.
Yes.
So, yeah, definitely the episode in which I'm concerned for Bachelor in Paradise and the rest of the season for the amount of
Seriously?
Photoshop work they
no.
do on the girls' bodies with their underwear.
Shit.
I was thinking different.
Can we please like set up like a hashtag for that? Like
Well,
hashtag no Photoshop. Like I'm
here's-
so not here for it.
Here's what I'm fully confused by. Why are we seeing the majority of the women's breasts on camera, unedited, in their various bikinis and gowns?
But not
But
butts.
why
But-
does that matter?
And it's like
either,
the
though?
side of the butt cheek.
Nobody's saying like why one and not the other.
Yeah.
Why can we see like in the other seasons like men in speedos?
Right.
Right. So, and that's what.
It's the
That's why I'm so confused. Where's the line? Is
There shouldn't be one at all.
Am I missing something? Is the side of the butt cheek, specifically the side, not even like the center of it, the side of it, is there something hugely erotic around that
But
that I'm
hold on.
missing?
Yes, because if you look at, and then we're going to wrap this up because we could talk about this for fucking hours, like literal
Could we?
hours. Yes. If you look at religions like Orthodox Judaism, right, they cover their hair because it's quote unquote sensual and sexual, and men are not supposed to see married women's hair. Like, so every culture, has this is considered to be quote unquote sexual. This happened with the Super Bowl halftime show.
So, yeah.
It is our issue as a culture is that we have sexualized the human body. That's the issue.
Bodies are not inherently sexual. Bodies are
Yes.
not inherently
Bodies
sexual.
can be sexual when they're sexual.
Yes. Right.
Just like a person can be sexual when they're sexual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like-
It's confusing AF.
Yeah.
Like, ABC just needs to figure out what they're doing. 'Cause
Yeah.
If you're creating a culture, fine. I may not agree with it, but fine. But like at least be consistent
Right.
and don't be
And don't
ridiculous.
be sexist.
Yeah.
Because if we can see men in Speedos with the outline of their penises, why can we not see female butts? And also, then that really just addresses, like, what about people who are non-binary?
Yeah.
And are they ever going to be on The Bachelor?
Never.
Like, probably.
Or have a sexuality other than, well, there's been one contestant who is bisexual, I think.
2.
Okay.
But one that they actually, like, explored
talked about
it.
on the show, which was like, thank fucking God.
Yes.
Well, and
Oh, yeah.
I guess that's just my issue with the Cosmo thing, and I want to wrap it up. But for the photo shoot thing, nightmare in and of itself, as it was already, they provided the bathing suits for the girls that they couldn't use on the show they were filming it with. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard of.
So we will be back next week. We'll be back next week. It'll be 2 episodes. I'm very much looking forward to getting out of the girl on girl stuff and more into watching Peter and the women who he's connected with actually build relationships.
Who's it gonna be?
And honestly,
I don't even
at this
know
point,
at this point.
like, even people like Maddie, who clearly they have this connection, all we
don't see anything of it.
All we've seen from them is talking about the date that they've had. And obviously there's more, because they would not have the connection that they have unless there was more, but we're not getting to see it, because what's filling up our TVs is this girl on girl crime, pink slime shit. So yeah, thank you for being here with us today. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. If you all want to follow Amanda on Instagram, her handle is Amanda Katherine Loy, Katherine with a K-L-O-Y. We'll tag it in the description of both the podcast and the YouTube video. She also has an incredible podcast called Live Your Fuck Yes Life podcast. Kyle and I have been on it a couple of times. Plug it.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here with us so much. And we just are so grateful. Thank you to Stand Up New York and LaughPass for your sponsorship. And we will see you all next week to recap Wednesday and Monday's episodes. Bye, friends.
Bye, friends.
Bye. I'm going to bend down to turn it off now. Bye.